I was 29 when this happened. At the time, I worked as a freelance land survey assistant, mostly contract jobs, boundary checks, elevation readings, access roads. The kind of work that takes you far off the map, literally. I've always been quiet, observant, the type who prefers listening over talking. I grew up in western North Carolina, so the Appalachian Mountains never scared me. They felt familiar, home even. This took place in early October of 2019, just as the leaves were starting to turn. Cool mornings, fog hanging low in the hollows. I'd been hired to help a senior surveyor verify old property markers near the Tennessee border. Land that had been passed down through generations, but hadn't been formally surveyed in decades. The job was supposed to take 2 days. We'd camp overnight near an old service road, then hike deeper the next morning. Nothing unusual. I'd done dozens of trips like this before. The first day started like any other. Coffee in a dented thermos, gas station breakfast sandwich, the radio fading in and out as I drove farther into the mountains. Cell service disappeared about an hour in. That wasn't unusual either. If you've spent time in Appalachia, you know how quiet it gets. Not peaceful quiet, empty quiet. The kind that presses against your ears. I remember thinking, as I pulled off onto the gravel road that morning, that it felt like the mountains were holding their breath. At the time, I didn't know why that thought stuck with me. I didn't know it would come back later, sharper, heavier, like a warning I'd ignored. I met Rick, the lead surveyor, at the trailhead just before noon. He was in his early 50s, gruff but friendly, wearing a faded Carhartt jacket that looked older than me. We went over maps spread across the hood of his truck, marking coordinates and planned routes. "Should be easy walking," he said, tapping the paper. "Old logging paths. Might be overgrown, but nothing crazy." We spent the afternoon hiking and placing temporary markers. Normal stuff. We joked about bad knees and bad coffee. I took photos, logged coordinates, double-checked measurements. The forest was dense but familiar. Oak, hickory, the smell of damp leaves and moss. Around dusk, we set up camp near a clearing by the service road. No fire, just a small camp stove. As the light faded, the woods seemed to close in tighter, shadows stacked on top of each other. Rick mentioned casually that some folks still lived way back in here. "Like cabins?" I asked. He shrugged. "Old homesteads. Some people don't want to be found." That didn't bother me. Appalachia is full of people who prefer isolation. I'd heard the stories, moonshiners, off-grid families, generational land disputes, but they always felt exaggerated. We ate in silence for a while. No animals, no wind, just the soft hiss of the stove. That night, we split shifts sleeping. Rick took first watch, I took the second. When I lay down in my sleeping bag, staring at the dark outline of trees, I remember feeling oddly exposed. Like we'd set up camp in the wrong place, though I couldn't explain why. Sometime after midnight, Rick shook my shoulder. "Your turn." I sat up, zipped my jacket, and took the folding chair near the edge of the clearing. Rick crawled into his tent and was asleep within minutes. The woods were completely still. About an hour into my watch, I heard something that didn't belong. It wasn't a branch snapping or an animal moving. It was rhythmic, soft, like footsteps being placed carefully, slowly, somewhere beyond the tree line. I leaned forward, listening. The sound stopped. I told myself it was a deer, or my imagination filling in gaps. The dark plays tricks on you out there. A few minutes later, I heard it again, closer this time, still deliberate, too controlled. "Hello?" I called out, feeling stupid the second the word left my mouth. No answer. I stood up, flashlight in hand, and swept the beam across the trees. Nothing reflected back except bark and leaves. No eyes, no movement. I sat back down, heart thudding harder than it should have. I remember thinking about how quiet Rick was in his tent, how far away the road felt. Then I noticed the smell. It was faint, but unmistakable. Cigarette smoke, not fresh, stale, like it had clung to clothes for a long time. No one we knew smoked, and there was no wind to carry it. The footsteps came again, this time from a different direction. Slow, measured. Whoever it was wasn't circling randomly. They were repositioning. I considered waking Rick, but I didn't want to overreact. I told myself maybe someone lived nearby, curious about us camping on their land. Still, I unzipped my jacket quietly and kept the flashlight on, thumb resting on the button. The woods felt closer now, like they were leaning in. The footsteps stopped completely, and that somehow made it worse. Minutes passed. My legs went numb from sitting still. Every sound, my breath, the fabric of my jacket, felt too loud. Then, from just beyond the trees, a voice spoke. "Y'all ain't supposed to be here." It was low, calm, male, no accent I could easily place. I stood up so fast the chair tipped over. "We've got permission," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "Survey work." Silence. I shined my flashlight toward where the voice had come from, but the beam only reached so far. The trees swallowed the light. Rick shifted in his tent behind me. I considered waking him fully, but the voice came again, closer. "You didn't see the signs." "What signs?" I asked. Again, nothing. I realized then that whoever was out there knew exactly where we were camped. They hadn't stumbled across us. They'd been watching long enough to understand our setup, our routines. I heard the crunch of gravel, slow steps, coming from the direction of the service road. That was wrong. That was our exit. I shouted Rick's name. He woke up instantly, confusion turning to alertness when he saw my face. "There's someone out there," I said quietly. Before Rick could respond, a figure stepped just into the edge of the clearing. He was tall, thin, wearing dark clothes that blended too well with the forest. His face stayed in shadow, even when my flashlight passed over him. He didn't raise his hands, didn't smile. He just stood there like he'd been waiting. Rick stood beside me, tense but controlled. "Can we help you?" he asked. The man tilted his head slightly, studying us. "You've been walking lines," he said. "Marking trees." Rick nodded. "That's correct. This land's been quiet a long time." Something about the way he said quiet made my stomach drop. "We'll be gone tomorrow," Rick replied. "No trouble intended." The man took a step closer. Gravel shifted under his boot. I noticed then that he was blocking the path to the road entirely. "Some folks don't leave," he said. My hand tightened around the flashlight. Rick subtly shifted his stance, putting himself half a step in front of me. "We're leaving now," Rick said. The man smiled then, not friendly, just a slight pull at the corner of his mouth. "No," he said softly. "You ain't." Everything after that happened fast. From the darkness behind him, another shape moved, then another. I couldn't see faces, just outlines, silhouettes blending into the trees. Rick swore under his breath. I felt a surge of panic, so strong it made my vision blur. There were too many of them. They hadn't approached aggressively, but that almost made it worse. Rick grabbed my arm and hissed, "Run! Now!" We bolted, not toward the road, but straight into the woods. Branches whipped at my face, roots grabbed at my boots. I heard shouting behind us, not loud, not frantic, calm, coordinated. I tripped once, hard, scraping my palms raw, but Rick hauled me up without slowing. Somewhere behind us, I heard laughter, low, amused. We didn't stop running until my lungs burned and my legs gave out. When we finally collapsed behind a rocky outcrop, the forest was silent again. Too silent. We waited until dawn before moving. When we finally made it back to the truck, using a long looping route, we found deep scratches along the doors. Not random, deliberate, like someone wanted us to notice. We drove straight to the nearest sheriff's station. The deputy listened, nodding slowly, but his eyes told me everything. "Probably locals messing with you," he said. "They don't like outsiders." No report, no follow-up. Rick quit the job that week. I didn't argue. For months afterward, I couldn't sleep without lights on. Any unexpected sound made my chest tighten. I avoided the mountains I'd grown up loving. The worst part wasn't the fear. It was the certainty that what happened to us wasn't rare. It was routine. It's been years now. I don't do field work anymore. Sometimes late at night I think about how calm that man sounded, how confident, like we were never in danger, because the outcome was already decided. The maps we used showed empty land, but someone was watching us long before we arrived. And I still wonder how many people went into those mountains believing the same thing we did, and never made it back to tell their story.